Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Van Hook with SBDC at FIU. We'll give it a few minutes for everybody to sign in, but just thank you for joining us on this webinar. And I think we can go ahead and get started. I know more folks are going to stream in, but thank you for joining us today on this presentation that's focused on bidding for success. We have two really great presenters on this particular topic. You're in luck, so you get two presenters for the price of one. Matt Block, who is a consultant with Florida SBDC at FIU, and also our colleague Barbara Cotto, who's the director of the really great startup FIU procurement program. And we are going to get you some good information, like I said, on being successful with bids, because a lot of businesses contact us and they have tried a lot to get particular opportunities, and they just haven't figured out the secret sauce or the formula in terms of putting in a successful bid. So this particular presentation is focusing on that. And as Matt put in the slide, a lot of the do's, some of the don'ts. And so I'm going to just tell you quickly about our program, and then I'll let Matt and Barbara talk about themselves and also their program. But the Florida SBDC network, we are located under FIU's College of Business. We have a really great team of business consultants who is focused on helping you to start and grow your business. In regards to this particular topic, last year we helped businesses to secure almost $78 million in federal, state, and local contracts. That's everything from like a local contract all the way up to Department of Defense contracts. So we can definitely help you in that regard. We are an SBA resource partner, as the slide mentioned. And then housekeeping, there will be a couple of polls that'll pop up. So please take a minute to fill out the poll, put more information on your business. We just want to know who we're talking to. And also, don't be shy. Please put in the chat, who are you? What's your business? What's your industry? Because that'll help Barbara and Matt to tailor the discussion towards the type of businesses that are in here. And we have a really great team of consultants such as Matt. And I'll let Matt kind of introduce his bio when he presents. But we're here to help you grow your business. We're an SBA resource partner. We also get funding from the Department of Defense for the PTAC program, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which is a consultant that can help you when you're going for government contracts as well, help you with research, help you with certifications, those type of things. You can go to the next slide, Matt. Because I want to get to your presentation. They didn't log on to hear me talk. They want to hear you guys talk. And as we said, we focus on one-on-one business consulting. The only stuff that we cannot help you with is legal or tax advice. And so if you are in Miami-Dade County or the Florida Keys, we are very lucky to be your SBDC. So please reach out to us. And then I guess, Matt, the next slide, this shows you some of the hard work that our team has done. As I mentioned, last year we did $78 million in government contracts. We also did $95 million in capital, because we know that a lot of businesses needed help accessing disaster funding and other funding to stay afloat. You can go to the next slide, Matt. And we also are very proud that our team has also launched 116 businesses during the pandemic between last year and this year. I assume most of you guys are already in business. And most importantly, this is our really great team of consultants in Miami-Dade County. And then the next slide has our team located in the Keys. So we basically run all the way from North Miami-Dade all the way to Key West. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara and to Matt, but please put in the chat if you have any background on your business. And also please get them some really good questions, because we want to answer your questions at the end. And just thanks to them for the really great presentation. I look forward to listening in.
Thanks so much, Brian. Barbara, you want to introduce yourself before we begin?
Of course. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely.
As usual, it's very nice to join you. My name is Barbara Cotto, and as Brian mentioned, I am the program director for Startup FIU Procurement, which is an initiative born close to 3 years ago. And what we aim is to help small and minority-owned businesses in our community to grow, build capacity, and actually be able to access contracts with government and other anchor institutions, but also help you pivot your business. As Brian mentioned, we are focused on helping your business, moving you forward, and making sure that you pass COVID and that you become stronger than you were before. With that, I leave you, Matt.
Okay. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you so much, Brian. And Brianna, thank you so much for putting this presentation together. I want to say hi to everybody. I know my bio went past in another slide. I just want everybody to know really quickly, because I'm sure you're eager to get on with the information. I worked a long time in government contracting, local government contracting, federal government contracting. And as I left contracting, I was lucky enough to start working with programs like these that help small businesses get government contracting, get everything they need to get a hold. And it's been a great experience. One of my best feelings I get is when a small business goes and lands a government job for the first time when they thought it wasn't possible to do so because of all the hurdles. So one thing I think I've specialized in over the years is helping small businesses go over all those hurdles. But another big thing is what we're talking about today, which is basically estimating and bidding, which is always that big question mark. It's they'd say I have to put in a bid, but what does a bid look like? What is a bid? And I just want everybody to know that usually when we talk about bids, we tend to go towards construction. It's like, oh, a bid is for construction and a proposal is for professional service, stuff like that. And that's not necessarily true. It's a question of terminology, whereas like the FDOT, for example, will call it a bid. They also call professional services contracts a bid. It just depends on how you look at it. This particular course is not about, construction bidding or anything like that. It's about putting together a bid no matter what you're doing. There might be some, jobs that require equipment, others that don't. Sometimes we just think of equipment as, big tractors or bulldozers or stuff like that, when equipment sometimes can be inside a nail salon is the equipment that you have. So I want everybody to keep that into consideration. A bid is basically, before we begin anything, I just want to say this, a bid is basically what your costs are, plus your overhead, plus your profit. That's what a bid is, and if you look at the process, no matter who it is, whether it's Walmart, Target, Home Depot, they all do estimating when they put prices onto those shelves for you. They need to know that every time you buy a sack of cement or something, that they're making money on that sack of cement. And remember, the cement doesn't walk itself towards the bins where you buy them, right? There's people involved, there's logistics involved, and all those costs need to be put into every single type of bid. So that's the kind of bidding we're talking about today. Okay. So the first thing we need to talk about in this slide is that this course is designed to give general information about bidding. All right. So we spoke about this. Well, there's different types of work, about how business composed. The processes, in my experience, at least, are always the same, no matter what your service you're doing, no matter what you're selling. Okay. So this course is mostly designed to help companies gather information. Okay. Which is probably, I've seen one of the biggest pitfalls in bidding is that you just don't have the information to be able to bid the job. All right. Each job is unique, and you need to make sure that you have all the information to be able to bid a job. Okay. Well, there are many defined process and definitions. Successful businesses create their own models and innovate these models. That's what we call bidding power. Okay. You've probably heard of these firms. Oh, they win every bid. They win this. It's not just about price. It's because they have a very successful bidding procedure. Okay. And every company needs to find what their best bidding procedures are based on their strengths. Okay. This is very important. You're going to hear this at least 3 times during the presentation, is that all numbers I use in these examples are for demonstration purposes only. I literally just covered my eyes and punch numbers in. So please, please, please do not think that these numbers reflect anything in reality, because you're going to get into a lot of trouble. Okay. I just use the numbers to fill out boxes. Okay. So, it's only for demonstration purposes. And if I sound like a broken record, I'm going to repeat this again, but, the reason is that, you're going to learn through this that there's no fixed prices in bidding. So please do not use any of these prices. All right. Okay. And there we go. All right. So the bidding process, very important. All right. Before we begin anything, before we start looking at papers or anything, the first thing about bidding is bidders and companies who bid need to be organized. All right. You need to be very, very organized. And this is something that, over the years, I've met tons of people that are inside the processes. Some of them are very organized. Some of them are not. If, a person is not organized at one thing, they're probably organized at another. So this is not a fault. All right. But just like any other job, you've got to pick people who have the skills to do this. All right. So if the person you have bidding right now is not the most organized person, you need to find someone else who can be organized, because all this is about information, and information needs to be organized in order to make the best determination. Okay. If the business owner is not the best person because they're too busy with their schedule to be organized, then probably that person should not be bidding the job, because all it takes is misplacing one paper for you to lose a lot of money on a bid. Okay. Very important, bidding is a full-time job. This is a big problem. And sometimes I know people don't like to hear this, especially when you're a one-person operation starting your business. Kudos to you, by the way. I don't know how you work 27 hours a day. But regardless of how much you can work and how much stamina you have, bidding needs to be a full-time job. And I always tell everybody, think about it. Even if you're like the best worker in the world, you require no sleep, and your stamina is excellent, and even after all that, you're still limiting. If you're doing the field and you're doing the bidding, you're 50% as effective in each one of those fields. So you're not being 100% effective in both of them. Okay. So bidding, usually what happens when people try to bid and run the field at the same time is two things. One, as it says here in the slide, if you try to do both, your bidding will be mediocre and you'll lose money, and your field will be mediocre and you'll lose money. Okay. And the other thing that happens most of the time is, because we're doing this, we're not constantly bidding, because when one person's handling both, that usually means that they bid a job, they win the job, then they go out to perform the job, and nobody's bidding while the person's performing the job. So by the time the owner gets back from finishing the job out in the field, we're back to square one again. And any profit, if you made any profit that you made on the job has to go towards the bidding process again. So now you've not made any money. Okay. Bidding needs to be a continuous process. It can't stop. All right. Very important. If your bidding is not on point, it is very difficult to recover those mistakes in the field. This is very important. Because sometimes, when I was training a lot of people, it's like, well, I just don't have time to put the bid together right, so I'm just going to throw a number out there. Throwing a number out there can be very costly if you don't know, because as we're going to see soon, once you sign a contract, most of the times there's no way to change this contract. So if the number you threw out there was like way under what it is, what it actually is out in the field, you can be in a lot of trouble. Bottom line is, people ask me, like, what do I do if I don't have time? What I always answer to that question is, don't bid the job. If you don't have time to put it together properly, just don't bid the job. You're safer doing that. Yes, Barbara.
Matt, I would like to add to that point that if you're not sure either, we recommend for you to look into historical contracts, meaning who has been awarded in the past. If it is with a government entity, these are public records. You could go back and just find out in the past when they bid for this process, when they were looking into purchasing these items, who won, what was the best pricing, what were they were asking for, and that will give you some guidance into the new bid.
Right. And even then, sometimes you can look at it and say, maybe this bid's not for me, right? So you don't have to waste your time bidding the job, because there's somebody else out there that can just provide, the service a lot cheaper than you can, or whatever, So you move on to the next job until you find one that goes to the strength of your company. Thank you so much, Barbara. Okay. So this is very important. I made it one slide. There's tons of nevers here. This is, when I've trained a lot of firms doing this, this is the biggest, this is like the biggest problem I need to help them get over, because it's always like, well, I need my competitors' prices. All right. It's good to have those as a point of reference, but never use them. Okay. Why? Prices depend on job difficulty, the firm's capabilities, and the firm's human power. All right. All prices are unique to each company. All right. You can have like a ballpark. All right. But using someone else's number just because it's easy to use can be a big problem. Like, here's a quick example. A large company can perform work faster because they have more excavators, and experienced crew, and a field supervisor. All right. A small company can probably not meet these same conditions. All right. And the price can be higher or lower depending on the work at hand. All right. So it could be that this particular job is a really good fit for your company because of its size, but it can also be the contrary. It could be that it's not a good fit for your company. And a lot of small business owners think, well, since I'm just, one or two people, I can do the job cheaper. And that's not true, because what's going to happen is you're going to spend a lot more time on that job than the firm that does have so, even though they're paying a lot more per day, If they finish that project in 30 days and you finish it in 200, guess who spent less money doing the job? So it's very important that you keep that into consideration. You know, a point of reference is great to see what they're charging, but you need to look at all the conditions that are inside that price. Okay. This is very important. All right. If you're not willing to read documents, plans, and contracts, then you need to find somebody who will. You know, sometimes these contracts, they come out, you know, and I have a lot of my clients are like, man, well, how do they expect me to read, you know, 114 pages when there's only 20 days? And I'm like, well, you know, you can, but the problem is you're going to have to stop doing everything else you're doing. And they tell me, well, I can't stop because I got to bring money into the company. Well, this is where that problem begins. So you have two choices now, right? One, which is never recommended, is just don't read the 114 pages and just throw a number out there and, you know, and see what happens and hope you don't lose your shirt at the end of the job. Or the other option is you got to find somebody else who can go over all the documents for you. Okay. A lot of people ask me, like, you know, should I hire a third party to do this? You can. I never recommend it because third parties usually don't have the best interest of the company in mind. And it's not because they don't care. It's because, you know, they don't understand your scope. They don't understand your company. They don't understand how your company functions. I don't think anybody else does other than the owners and the people who are involved in the company. So, you know, handing it out to a third person doesn't work with you when you're not involved. I don't think is the best way to do this. However, you know, if you're having problem understanding part of those 114 pages or finding the information that you need, that's what we're here for. That's what Barbara's here for. That's what Brian's here for. Okay. You can contact us and we can help you, like, you know, try to like break these, you know, these documents and find the parts that you want. What we can't do is tell you, you know, they need this much sidewalk or they need this much products to be able to we cannot do that because that's your scope. We're not the experts. Okay. Which is why it's very important. So step one, most important step of them all, gather all your documents. Okay. If you are bidding the job without all documents, you are not bidding the job correctly. All right. Very important point two, do not let anyone convince you that you only need to look at your part of the work. This goes for subcontractors. This is very important. If you look at any type of contract, there's a section called general conditions. The general conditions on a job need to be met by every single person that's on that job, every single firm. All right. And these general conditions can cost you a lot of money. All right. Don't think because I'm an electrician, I just got to take care of the electrical part of the work. All right. I'll give you a good example. There's environmental requirements on all these jobs. All right. On most of them nowadays, there's environmental requirements. If you just bid the electrical part of the job, and then when you go out there, they tell you, hey, you need to have sediment barriers while you're working here or something like that. If you go look at, you know, what some sediment barriers are worth, they might be worth $3,000, you know, and there's no way out. There's no way like, well, I bid my part. Unless you can convince the general contractor to, you know, fork over the $3,000, it's going to be very difficult. You're going to be held responsible for that. So please be careful. Don't let anyone tell you just look at your part. Look at the entire contract and see what's involved. Okay. Plan reading skills are essential. This is one thing I can tell everybody about plan reading skills. Not to get into too much like stories, but the first time somebody told me read a plan and they just threw it in front of me, one of those big plans they used to print before with you needed the drafting table. And I was like 20 years old and I wanted to cry. I wanted to cry because I opened up the plan and all I see was like, you know, lines and things going everywhere. I didn't understand anything. All right. And to be honest, I wanted to quit. I'm like, why did they tell me to do this when I don't understand any of this? I'm not an engineer. I'm 19 years old. What do I know about this? And finally, someone took me and said, you know, hey, first of all, calm down. All right. Second of all, you know how things look out there in the field. So let's translate it here on the pic. So basically the gentleman sat with me and he went, look, this is this, this is that. And it took me like 2 days to understand where everything was at without taking an engineering class in my life. All right. So I can say this confidently. It's not difficult. It's not. However, it is necessary. All right. If you need to learn to read plans, please look for courses on the subject. There's plenty of courses out there. There's free courses here. YouTube has plenty of free courses on them. Just all you need to understand is, you know, how the engineers draw this. You don't need to draw the plans, just read them. Please keep that in mind. Okay. So the more you know about the job you are bidding, the less mistakes you will make. And the reason I said the less mistakes is because I've put over 100 bids out in my life, big ones, and I've never had one where there wasn't a mistake. What's important is that there's no catastrophic mistakes. All right. Small mistakes can be fixed, and even if the mistake's like pretty bad, if we knew the mistake happened before time, even after there's ways to go around it. But if you make a catastrophic mistake, you only have two options: perform the job at a loss or back out, which will also be a loss. Okay, so please keep that in mind. All right, the more you know, the more you know. Yes, Barbara.
Yes, Matt, what I would like to add is that the principle also applies for any process of bidding, whether you're in consulting services for IT or any other consulting service. If you are providing goods and not necessarily services, the principle still applies. It is understanding what is the scope of work, what is required within that scope of work or within the guidelines for the product that they are expecting, and to make sure that you have validated each one of them. And if you cannot deliver in the process, you just there have the time to say, no, I'm not moving forward with this bid, or yes, I am, but I just realized that there is part of the scope that is not clear. And if it's not clear, there are vehicles to go after and get clarifications for.
Thank you so much. And that brought up a good point. Just reminded me, I was recently working with somebody, and they put in a bid. It was for technical service, like Barbara just said. It was some kind of technical service, and they called me in a panic because they found out that they couldn't do the service through Zoom like they thought they could, and they had to travel to the site. And they're like, well, how am I gonna get the money for that? I'm like, well, show me the documents. And I looked at the documents, and there it was. It said clearly that they need to travel. I even gave them like the days that they had to be there in the month and everything. I'm like, well, you didn't read this, and so as Barbara says, it applies to everything. It doesn't matter whether it's construction or anything. This was like it was a consulting service, and this firm found out that they had to travel to the site, and it was pretty far away, like 6 hours away. And they won the bid, and now they're on the hook for it. So that's very thanks for bringing that up. That's very important. This is one of my favorite parts of the presentation, because I kind of like to break the difference in words here. That a common misconception is that estimating is the same as bidding. All right. Some people use these words interchangeably: estimating, bidding. And once you're in an office, doing this, you quickly learn that they're not. They're in both fact two different procedures that are part of the process. Okay. So what's the difference between estimating and bidding? First, let's understand what estimating is. All right. Estimating does not take any money into account. This is the most important thing. All right. Every time I used to ask in class, like, what's estimating? Everyone would tell me, oh, the costs and the money and this. So then I ask them, like, so what's bidding? And they say, oh, the costs and the money. So again, we're using the same thing. Estimating does not take any money into account. Okay. When you're estimating, you need to forget about money while you're estimating. We'll talk about money later. Okay. So what is estimating? It involves gathering all your work items, determining production rates, which are the time it takes you to do things, right? Determining needs, determining requirements, all right? Necessary materials, and determining if some work needs to be performed by subcontractors. That is estimation, all right? It's quantities, but not quantities of money, all right? It's everything that needs to be done. If we open something, we say we got to provide, 20,000 computers to this, and that, right? That's estimating 20,000 computers. We're not talking about how much they're worth. We need to find out how many units we need to give of each thing, okay? And if we're performing some kind of service or work, how much time it's going to take us to do this work, estimating, right? That's why they call it guesstimating, because we're trying to get those days correct, right? An estimate should be a written document. This is very important. It is not an abstract idea in our minds. I meet a lot of business owners are like, oh, I got the estimate right here. And I'm like, okay, so how much is it? Oh, it's going to be around this. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like if I'm working for somebody and I'm an estimator, I'm not the owner, I don't have that liberty to tell my boss, it's going to be around there. I have that liberty. I'll probably be fired as an estimator like that. So please keep that in mind when you're doing this. There's a reason, that there's processes for this. Yes, Barbara.
Matt, I would like to add, the estimating process and the request for quote go in similar ways. And I think that is important that we bring this concept in, because we are focusing obviously on bidding, but there is a secondary process, and not secondary because one goes first, the other one goes second. It's just that there are alternate ways to access for opportunities for procurement. And one vehicle of those will be a request for quote. And on a request for quote, You cannot be estimating. You need to make sure that it's clear that you can deliver a product or service, the
Mhm.
quantity that they are asking you in the terms of conditions and the point of delivery at a very specific price. And
Yeah,
that implies all the guarantees and needs for it. And
yeah,
therefore, that happens with services too. It is whether you will need one consultant to provide the service or you will need 10. It needs to
exactly.
be
Yeah.
rounded and included. It's not subject to discussion. It
Mhm.
is, this is the scope that you're asking to be quoted.
Mhm.
This is the scope that you're delivering on, and this is your final price.
Mhm.
Once you are awarded, there is no way to go back unless they ask you to add services, which
Mhm.
that will be a modification of that PO, not
Mhm.
part of the initial scope of work.
Correct. And that's very important. I'm glad Barbara wrote this up because it just opens up, a lot of firms also, and I should have written a slide about this. A lot of firms think, oh, well, I'm going to bid low and I'm going to hit them with change orders. Yeah, welcome to the government world. It's going to be very difficult to hit them with change orders once you've been awarded a contract, right? Change orders happen when they need something, not when the firm needs more money. That's usually when it happens. So Barbara says absolutely correct. It's like, if you bid on a job for services and they said like a minimum of 4 consultants, and you say, hey, I'll just go with one. And if I need more money, I'll request it later. That's not going to happen. You need to do it with the 4 consultants. They want to add another one, then yeah, they'll say, well, this wasn't the original quantity. So you did it for 4, which was the correct estimate. We're putting in 5 so you can put in more money for that contract. All right. But it can't work the other way around. All right, third step. Now, once we have the estimate, now we can bid the job. Now we have the written estimate in hands, quantities, how many consultants we need, how many equipment we need, what time it's going to take us. All right. Now we can use this estimate to bid the job. All right. So very important. Calculate how much your labor will cost. Please keep in mind that labor is not only field personnel that's out there in the sun. All right. Labor is any type of work that's not clerical. Please keep that in mind. Okay. It's anybody basically who works per the hour, right? On this particular project. Anybody who's making money by the hour in this particular project is a laborer in sense, okay? Calculate how much your material will cost. The way to do this is getting quotes, right? So this is a good example. The estimate will tell you what materials you need. You just break down all the materials, and the bidding section is getting the quotes to price those materials, okay? Calculate how much equipment will cost. Is it owned or leased? Now, put all of these together for each item on the estimate to get your what they call total direct cost. Not to delve too much into this, but total direct cost in accounting is not the same as total direct cost in estimating. All right. Just keep in mind that accounting is counting the money once it's in. Estimating is basically we're trying to create the money. All right. So, while accountants are not wrong, total direct cost is inside a job is basically how much is this job's going to cost you without overhead or profit, which brings to the next point. All right. Total direct cost does not include overhead or profits. These costs that we're going to calculate are just the cost to perform the items, period. So we can have a cost to base ourselves on. All right. Oh, by the way, we're going to have questions at the end. I can see the chat filling up. I'm going to leave room for questions. So I'll answer any questions you may have. I'll try my best. So 4, add overhead and profit. All right. Once you're done with the costs, overhead recovery is an added cost to recover what it takes to operate your firm. All right. That's what overhead is. Overhead is not profit. It's whatever it takes to, your rent, your salary. We'll talk about this in a minute. The owner's salary, anybody else's salary that's clerical, bidders, whoever you have. That's what your overhead costs. What it takes to keep what's outside the job, all the costs that you're incurring outside the job that are not related to any other job, obviously, are overhead costs that need to be recovered. Okay. Please keep in mind that the biggest overhead costs that usually companies have are indeed salaries. All right. The owner's salary, the estimator's salary, the office manager's salary, so on. Those are all overhead costs that need to be recovered. We'll talk about this. And profit is an added percentage markup from a known number. Please, this is very important. Every time I speak to somebody, like, well, how much do you want to make in profit? And it's actually a trick question when I do that, because they tell me, oh, 20%. And I go, well, do you know what your costs are? And they go, no. All right. So my question then is, you want to make 20% off an unknown number. All right. 20% of 100 is 20. Right. What's 20% of 1,506,000? I don't know. All right. So whatever your costs plus your overhead are, that profit is a markup based on that. If you don't know what your costs are, saying I want 20% profit means nothing because you have nothing to pull that 20% out of. I hope I'm making some sense. As I put here, we can say that we added 20% and it might as well have been 270% because it makes no difference. We just don't know. All right. So profit is what's supposed to be left over after we pay all the costs for the job. We pay the overhead. That's what's supposed to be left over. Okay. More on profit soon. All right. 5, after all this work, now what do? We turn in the bid, right? Once you're done adding the profit, we can assume all due diligence on the bid. So let's turn it in. One of the biggest questions I always get, what format? What format is a bid turned in? The answer to that is whatever the client asks for. All right. If you go to bid for one agency, they'll give you one format. If you see the RFPs, they'll give you another format. If you see an RFQ, it'll give you another format. Subcontractors, most of the time, the prime just wants a quote with your company letterhead on it. They're fine with that. All right. Don't stress about the format. If you're bidding as a prime, it's going to give you clear instructions on how to do it. All right. If you're bidding as a prime, if you're bidding as a sub, all you got to do is ask the prime how they prefer their bid to be sent to them. Most of the times, all they need is a quote because they use that quote to put prices in their bids. Okay. And that's fine with them. Okay. So don't stress about the format. The format is basically whatever it is, whether it's online, whether it's in an RFQ, an RFP, it's usually an Excel box with boxes for you to fill in to put your prices. All right. Just variations of it. So don't stress about that. Okay. Worry about the information inside the format. That's what's very important. Okay. Barbara.
Very important. And I know you're getting into the format and that being a big deal, but at the same time, if the agency requires a specific format with a specific and detailed scope and an amount of pages, please tie to that request.
Yep.
If you pass one page, you will be disqualified because you went over one page. It sounds simple. It sounds, I'm not going to use the word to describe it, but in reality, it is. We've seen cases that by just one page, it's disqualified and it was a good bid. It was a good offering in the process. So make sure that you attain. If there is no format, make it as straightforward as it needs to be with the content required.
Always follow instructions. The instructions are clear cut, and every single one of these are very clear cut. They'll tell you we want this, 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 this. And what Barbara's saying is true. Like sometimes, they tell you include like, a resume of the key personnel on your company, and, sometimes it's hard to develop these or it takes time. You're like, oh, I'm not going to present it. You're going to be disqualified because you're not following the instructions. Okay. So it depends, it depends on, what kind of job you're bidding on. Most of the times, if you're bidding as the prime contractor, which means directly to the agency, they're going to tell you exactly step-by-step how they want these bids sent to them. All right. If you're bidding as a subcontractor, it's a lot more lenient because the primes are the ones who are going to have to present that step-by-step to them, not you. It's a lot more lenient. Okay. Thanks so much. All right. Once the bid is turned in, very important, find another bid to work on immediately. Okay. Taking an hour break after turning your bid is fine. It was hard work. Enjoy your hour. Go have a margarita. All right. But taking a week-long break after bidding could spell disaster for the company. All right. This is always a big problem with small companies. All right. That I encounter a lot. It's we turned in this bid and we're waiting. And I'm like, what are you waiting for? If you look at the next bullet point, it's telling you there's a very high chance you're not going to win the bid you just won. All right. I'm sorry to break your hearts, but usually the rate of winning bids is 1 in 10. That's just, some companies are better, some companies are worse, but the general is 1 in 10. All right. So, which means you got to turn in 10 bids to win 1. All right. So sometimes I ask like firms owners, I'm like, hey, how you doing with your bidding? Oh, we just turned in 1. And usually I know the bid they're talking about because I've helped other people with it. And like, yeah, well, that was due like 3 weeks ago. So what are you doing now? We're just waiting to see what the results are. I'm like, well, how are you paying the bills for your company? How are you paying your payroll? It's very important that bidding be an ongoing process. All right. We spoke about that at the beginning, that you can't bid and then manage the field and then come back and bid again because you're not getting that constant influx into the company. All right. Successful firms never stop bidding. Everyone asks me like, how do these firms get all the work? I'm like, that's why. That's the main reason why right there. They never stop bidding. They lose jobs. They don't get frustrated. They know that they're going to lose more jobs than they win. They know that. but they just they don't win every single job. If they won every single job, there'd only be one company out there. Okay. So this is very important. You cannot stop bidding. Once you're done with one, that's it. Put it aside. All you can do now is wait. There's nothing else you can do but wait. Okay. There's no button you can push to, like, make time go faster. So, let's start working on another bid while waiting to see what happens with this one. Okay. All right. So this is very important. Know your costs. Okay. So what are the costs involved? All right. Now this goes for, I've had this argument, a lot of times with, with fellow consultants, and we always come up with this, like, we've always looked for more or less cost we can put on this, but mostly jobs can either have all these 5, they can have 4, they can have 3, but they'll never have more than these costs. Okay. And I know you can't ask questions right now, so I'm going to kind of explain it, because a lot of people tell me all the times, oh yeah, well, there's 5 there. What about insurance? Insurance is a cost. I pay that every month. It's a big cost. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Insurance is a cost. Now, the question would be, what type of insurance is it? If we're talking workman's compensation insurance, all right, that is a direct cost to labor, right? If we're talking, equipment insurance, any type of insurance on equipment, that insurance should go inside the equipment, all right? If we're talking like, fire insurance for our building, that would be inside our overhead. So yes, your insurance is all throughout these 5, all right? Now, for those of you who do the books, who do accounting, this might make no sense. And absolutely, it makes no sense in accounting. And again, it's because accounting counts the money once it's in. What we're trying to do here is develop a system where we don't miss anything when we're putting in bids. So we can develop that money for accounting to count, okay? So as far as I know, and this is my personal order of most important ones to look out for, are labor. To me is the most important one. I'll explain why in a second. Overhead, okay? And I know overhead gets a bad rep. Like, people think overhead's a bad thing, and it's not, or it's, so when people get that thing that a word is bad, I like to change the name, like use a euphemism to make people like, think of the word differently. It's operating costs. Please keep in mind that the biggest companies in the world have the biggest overheads, right? And they're not in the business of losing money. So there's a reason they have these overheads. So overhead's not a bad thing. Okay. What's bad is when you have too much overhead and no work. That's bad. But the more work you have, the more overhead you have to add to manage that work. We'll talk about this. All right. Equipment costs, material costs are 4th. Yes, believe it or not. And I'll explain why in a second. And subcontractors. And the reason I'm putting in this order is because of the difficulty of calculation. All right. As an estimator, believe it or not, labor is probably one of the hardest ones to calculate because it's based on hourly wages. All right. So if I say something's going to take 70 hours to do, and we go out there and it took 120 hours, I just lost my company a lot of money. All right. Because I estimated the labor wrong. All right. Whereas materials, that's in 4th, all right, is not based on time. It's like a public shopping list, right? As long as I go over the documents and extract all the materials, I know what it is, and it's not going to change as long as I got it right, right? But with labor, it's with labor and equipment, for example, those 2 things, they're a lot more tricky because you got to have a very good knowledge of how much things are going to cost you. All right, your materials, usually if it costs you $1,500 to buy materials for a job, unless you made a mistake, it's going to be $1,500 because you got your quotes or everything. All right. With labor, it's a lot more complicated. And why are subcontractors at the end? It's not about the quantity of money they charge. It's because they're the easiest ones to put into your bid. Because why? The subcontractors, when they send you a quote, they're telling you exactly how much they're going to charge. They did their own estimating for their part of the job for you. So all you have to do is put in their price, and they should be able to finish that. They should be able to do their portion of the job for you. Okay. That's why I'm basing it based on, the easiest way to estimate and bid, from hardest to easiest. Okay. Oh, very important. Let me go back a second. There is no miscellaneous in construction estimating. All right. You cannot have a miscellaneous column. Miscellaneous column means I don't know what this is, so I'm going to sweep it under the rug. All right. And hope it goes away. All right. When it comes to money and these jobs, there's, everything has to be caught. If you put it under miscellaneous, there's just no way you're going to recover that because you don't know where you're going to recover it from. Okay. So, and I know that there's this strong thing, like, if I don't know I don't know what this is, let me put this in another category. Don't ever do that. Try to locate in these 5 where that goes, right? If you have a question of where your general liability insurance goes, don't throw it under miscellaneous. All right. And here's a tip. Don't throw it into overhead either, because it's a labor cost, because general liability is for when your workers on, anywhere wreck something on the person's site. Anything gets just, that's what general liability is for. Okay. So it's usually, it's labor oriented. Yes, Barbara.
I was going to add, Matt, that although you're basing it in construction, once again, it's the same principle for any industry, particularly if you are offering services in the IT area,
Yep.
where you may have a combination of software, equipment, plus consulting hours, or a specific project. It's the same principle. And there are no miscellaneous there either. You just have to make sure that you account for how many consultants, which it will be in this case, what is stated here as subcontractors, it will be your consultants, and what will be their fees. In materials and equipment, that's where you will have to segment the different ranges or branches that you're working on. But the overhead will have your operating costs, because for you to have everything, you need to actually include it. So this is not solely to construction. It's labeled similarly. Some of the concepts just will change the word, but at the end, the process is the same. Just don't get driven by the word construction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank Barbara so much for that, because I tend to think of it that way, because that's what I used to do. Each one of them, each one of us has our specialty. But I have helped a lot of professional services firms, work on bids, and it's always the same. Like every time it's the same process. All right. Don't miss anything. Make sure you get everything. Don't throw anything under miscellaneous. Gather all the information, gather all your estimates, and put your bid together. All right. It's the same process. All right. You might not have equipment on a job because your process just doesn't require equipment. That's fine. All right. But just make sure that whatever other 4 you have, you might not have subcontractors. That's normal too. You may not have subcontractors either. All right. But just make sure that whichever ones you have, you're catching everything you need to catch, and you're not sweeping anything under the rug because it's inconvenient. Okay. Another disclaimer really quick. All right. I'm going to show you some numbers in a table next. The only reason I put them in the table so you can see the numbers. I didn't put them there because they represent anything. Okay. And again, I used a sidewalk as an example, just because I looked out the window and I saw a sidewalk. I said, let me put a sidewalk in there. I have no idea how to build a sidewalk. Never built a sidewalk in my life. Like most of you, my biggest experience with sidewalks is walking on them. So do not trust me with these prices, please. Okay. All right. So to catch all costs, estimators use what we call assemblies. All right. So basically, think of it as a big job. All right. There's a big job, but we need to break that job up into different sections. And this goes also for, other, types of work, whatever it is, you need to break it up into sections to find out how much if you're doing 2 separate types of services that are not related to each other, and you're trying to group those in together, you're not going to be able to cost it correctly. All right. So think of a big job. You need to break it up into pieces called assemblies. All right. And each one of these assemblies, you've got to look at these 5 prices. In this case, right? Labor, I've calculated 17 days to do this. Again, I made up all these numbers. All right. And the cost per day for labor is 1,560. So the total cost for this item is 26,520. All right. Equipment, I've estimated 11 days, the cost per day at 352. All right. Threw in all my fuel, what it cost me, all that. And I come to a total cost of 3,872. All right. Now, why do I say that materials are easier? Because in this case, all I did was find out, how much concrete I needed and how much, framing I needed, whatever it takes to do it. All right. And I came up that it's 7,456. All right. There's no days or cost per day involved. So that's, that's a done number. All right. Now, subcontractors. All right. I'm deciding not to use any. I don't need them. So it's a 0. All right. So the total, I'm sorry. So I got an overhead markup of 9,580. We're going to speak about this in a second, where I got this from. All right. For a total item cost of 47,428. All right. To build this. All right. Which is probably way too much money for a sidewalk. Anyway. So I'm sorry. Give me one second. So these are, this is the what assembly would look like. And then we got to move on to the next item, like, the wall or the flooring or whatever it is, we move on to the next item. Okay. And we start putting these together to put the bid together. But each item needs to be broken up into these 5. Okay. Without fail. That's how you work on these without missing anything. Okay. Now, profit. All right. When you work on these, the 47,000 is the cost without the profit. All right. So what's about profit? Profit is the most important part of any bid, because if you don't put a profit on the bid, what's the point? Why are you doing this for? All right. If you like estimating and bidding without a profit, that's fine, but you won't be doing it for long because you won't be growing your company. Okay. So the biggest question I get all the time is, Matt, how much profit should I put on a job? That's one of the biggest questions I get. And I'm like, all right, first of all, I probably don't know your industry, so I'm not the most qualified person to tell you what is the best profit for your job. But what I can tell you is this, all right? Everyone wants to make the most profit possible. So do I, all right? Everyone wants to make the most profit possible. However, when you're bidding, you need to determine how much price is important to win this bid, all right? Because if you put in a very large profit number, there's a very high chance that you're not going to win the bid, which means your profit is going to be 0 because the profit margin is too high, all right? And at the same time, if your profit margin is too low, all right, because you're trying to win the job, any mistake on the job is going to eat into that profit first and foremost. It's the first thing that starts suffering when there's a problem on a job is your profit. And I don't know about all of you here, but I've never been on a job that doesn't have problems. No, I've never seen one, regardless of the type of job. I've never seen one that doesn't have any problems. So you want to take that into consideration too. All right. And this is one that's probably got a lot of people's eyes open right here. Profit does not belong to the company owner. All right. I don't mean that you can't access the money as the owner when you want to. What I mean is that this money is designed. The way profit works is designed so that companies will grow every time they do a job. So if the owner takes the money out every time they build a job, the company's not growing. So if the company's not growing, you cannot go after bigger and better jobs and so on and so forth. All right. We'll talk about this, but this is very, very, very important. And then probably you're asking now, well, where am I supposed to get paid? All right. So that goes back to the overhead. All right. That goes back to the overhead of where you're getting paid from. We're going to talk about this. Profit is the sole source of growth for companies. All right. If you don't have any profit in the company's just not growing. All right. So the profit goes into the company's bank account. And I just want to know this, Barbara, feel free to chime in with this one. The profit margin in construction is between 3 and 5%. All right. And this probably breaks everyone's heart. They're like, oh my God, 3 and 5%. How can anybody live on that? All right. Just remember that the biggest construction companies you've heard of are working within these profit margins. And the owner's getting paid. They're running around in their Maseratis. All right. All the personnel in the office is getting paid. All right. Everyone's getting paid and they're still working at these profit margins. All right. And every time they finish a job, they're putting these profits back into the company and hiring more people. So it's obviously working. Okay. And I'll explain how the owners get paid in a second. Yes, Barbara.
You're absolutely right. Normally, you will see that profit margin in construction between 3 and the 5. In some other industries, you may see up to 10%, depending the origin of the industry. But that doesn't mean that it's a fixed profit.
Oh, absolutely not.
And it all depends on the equation. It all depends on how neat you run the operation. And very openly, it doesn't come in at your startup stage. It comes in once you have validated the right equation. And by that, what we mean is that when you get into this type of bidding process, you have to understand that you need to have some ground to go after a bid because it also has a cost. If you don't have the working capital to support that bid, you have to actually go for lines of credit to support it. You need to go into payment terms with your providers and suppliers. And therefore, the interest that you may have to pay because of the delay on a payment for this bid will impact your profitability on any of the projects. And therefore, that minimizes your profit margin. All these things need to be in consideration. You do not go after a bid if you don't have basically the cash flow or the financial support to get started on them. And you need to know also when not to bid, because at times going into too many bids will actually restrain your cash flow. So you need to understand the system. And lastly, once you go into this process, you also need to understand which ones to pick. Otherwise, they could look as good as gold, but they could become as red and rotten as an apple. So make sure that you are smart about it, that you establish a process right from the beginning.
Thanks so much. Okay. And this is what Barbara was talking about in a second. This is just what Barbara was talking about. All right. So I'm going to go this really quickly. You know, no profit equals no growth for a company. No growth equals less opportunities. You ever seen those companies that just don't move, that they're always the same and they never move out of that where they're working at? It's because of this. All right. But at the same time, more profit equals higher salaries. All right. And higher salaries equals a higher owner salary. All right. But the problem is, don't drain the profit. If you drain the profit, you're draining the cash flow, which is Barbara just talking about right now, which means you can't go after bigger jobs. All right. So draining the cash flow means draining the company. All right. So all that being said, all right, where does the owner get their money from then? All right. The owner needs to have a salary just like everybody who's working there, right? The salary needs to be higher, yes, by law, but you know, it doesn't need to be astronomically high. All right. So it depends on what the owner wants to do. But no matter what company I've been on, and I'm usually like, you know, been the person who's been close to the books and all that. The owner has a salary. They collect a paycheck like everybody else. They're not waiting for the end of the job to take all the money and, you know, go on that vacation they always wanted to go on. They're getting paid the same way everyone is getting paid every week. And that money is inside here, inside your overhead markup. All right. Now, Barbara knows there's a whole other presentation I have on overhead. You know, it's pretty long and explains how to do it. But basically for everybody, and remember, we're here to consult. So if you need us, just, you know, register with the center. If you're registered already, please ask your consultant. We can help you with this. Overhead calculation is not a difficult process. It just basically, you need to budget how much you're going to be spending in overhead for the year. All right. So your salary plus other people's salary, plus the rent, plus the electricity, plus the internet, plus office supplies, plus whatever else you have. Find out how much that is for a year, and then recover it in every single job you do. All right. How many hours did an estimator work on this? You put this into here. Okay. And so on and so forth. And every single job is going to have an overhead markup. All right. And your goal is, if your overhead is 120,000 for the year, your goal is to recover those 120,000 by the end of the year. Okay. And these need to be put into every single bit. And there's, you know, and what's good about it is some playroom with it, right? If you've recovered most of it by September, then you don't need to worry about the rest of it for the rest of the year. So you can put your bids lower and stuff like that. You know, this is, again, it's a long conversation, and we can do it through consulting sessions as well. And we also have presentations on it. So please, you know, keep it in mind. But, you know, the point I'm trying to make here is that the owner's salary is coming in through here, just like everybody else's salary. This is where it gets recovered. All right. It is not from the profit. All right. So if you put, how much profit? I put a 5% profit here. Okay. On those 47,000, there's 2,371.40 for this job. So the total bid price, remember, just for the sidewalk, is 49,499. You might say, well, you know, all that work just to make 2,371.40. All right. This was hard for me to understand too when I first started. All right. But you got to look at it this way. Okay. Yes, the company only made 2,371.40. Okay. However, they made that in 17 days, which is the maximum amount of days here to labor. All right. It was made in 17 days. Okay. And that's after everyone, laborers, the owner, and all the workers in the office have been paid. And it's only for one line item. Okay. So yes, we made 2,370. The company, it's not we, the company made $2,371 in 17 days after everyone, including the owner, has been paid. Okay. And, you know, then add all the line items or any other jobs you have going on. Okay. So, you know, using this formula, even at 5% markup, which is, you know, most will consider low. All right. You'll be making, you know, depending on how many items you're doing on a job, you could be making a lot of money. Then add how many other jobs you could be having going on at the same time. And that's the way. And remember, this is after everyone got paid. Okay. And all this needs to be going to the company's bank account so we can have cash flow for the future jobs. All right. Okay. And this is one more thing. And this is a question I get a lot. Like, Matt, do I need to show my the profit to my clients? Most of the time, no. And I mean most of the time because there are some jobs that will ask you to, break down what your profits are and all that. Very rarely though. Okay, but please remember when they ask you that, your competitors have to do the same thing, so don't take it, too seriously. But when most of the times this is what you do, right? Instead of doing what I did in last slide, right, which was putting the 5% at the bottom, I can just take this 5% and spread it among the items, right? So instead of telling them, that my labor is going to be 27,846, instead of telling them that it's only 23,000, I just include my my labor cost, my labor profit in there, so they don't. And this, if you think it's the same thing that happens when you go shop at a Target or a Walmart, right? Every time you buy an item, you take it off the shelf, the profit's included inside that item. Trust me, they know, but they're doing way more than I'll ever know. Okay, so I know that each single little item I pull out, the profit margin's in there. Okay, same thing. All right, and this is important that I use this example, but it's very simplistic. Depending on your type of work that you do, like if you have more overhead, you tend to put more, profit towards the overhead because that's where you make your money, right? So it's easier to recover. All right. So, depending on what type of, I've heard people say, well, I throw everything towards labor because, I have more labor. I'm like, yeah, but that's you, not all firms have the same. So it depends on basically where the most of your costs are. You might want to put most of your profit there because that's where you're going to be recovering the most. Almost done. We'll open up for questions in a second. All right. So that's basically the gist of this presentation. And I'm looking here. I got 22 chats here, and I wonder how many questions. Brian, Barbara, have you been looking at the questions?
Yeah, I can help you out. And I know Barbara has to hop off at 2. She has another meeting. So I was just going to thank Barbara for her expertise as always. She's a great wealth of information. And Barbara, did you have any parting thoughts or any kind of closing thoughts?
Well, before the closing thoughts, I see that there is a question about the websites, whether best to be in government, in the set-asides and disabled. So I will go briefly into my comments, and Matt, you can expand, and that way I can do the closing remarks. But there are several websites. It all depends on the agency that you're interested on and whether it's a state or federal. And that way you could go into govspend.com, you could go into SAM, you could go into Florida BitSync, you could go into Jagger, and you can expand more, Matt. But I wanted to say, please make sure that you take note onto everything that Matt was explaining. My purpose was here to expand my industry for you to understand that this is not solely to one industry. This applies to the process of bidding in general. There is more to the numbers and the calculation. And if you're aiming to pursue government contracting, anchor contracting, even on the corporate side, the principles are the same. Your overhead is not going to change. Your labor is not going to change. And you need to understand that and do your homework, do your research before you decide to get into this so you become successful at it. Don't give in at the first time that you receive a bad note saying, hey, this time you lost. You need to go through this process. It needs to become painful for you to learn from it. But once you're rewarded the first time, meaning you got your award, then it becomes something because you're in the right track. But it takes several tries, perseverance, and an understanding. And it's like going back to school. You really need to study what is behind it to become successful at it. With that, as always, Brian, I truly appreciate the invitation. Matt, it's always a pleasure to join you, particularly in this type of presentations. We have become pros at it, and hopefully we hear from all of you. We are here to assist and to help. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Barbara.
Hey, Barbara.
And everybody, for the websites, government websites, it depends on what job you're looking for. There's federal, there's state, there's city, county. So what I recommend to everybody is, if you're not registered with the center yet, please register with the center. I know that myself and my colleagues, we do tutorials on how to find government jobs, either through services or through, but one thing to understand is that all these can be accessed for free, through their own services. So, but these require like one-on-one training for you to understand the sites. Okay. So that's the best example, but everything is out there. Okay. Yes, Brian.
And then we did have a question about, is there set-asides for disabled veterans? The answer is yes.
Absolutely. The federal government has set-asides for And you need the certification, which is called Service
S-
Disabled
Yeah,
Veteran Business,
SD, what is it?
DOSB.
SDWOSB.
S, yeah,
Yeah.
SDVOSB. Yeah, it's a long acronym.
Mhm.
And yes, this if you're a disabled veteran, and I forget the form that they give you for that, they always tell me, and I keep forgetting the form. If you have that, all you need to do is register on SAM, and you need to register with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And there are plenty of set-asides. And I will tell you, whoever asked that question, I will tell you that is a very successful program. That program, I just found a document the other day. There was a news article about a service disabled veteran who won like it was $13 million contract as a set aside in that certification.
Mhm. Yeah, we have a number of clients that have been successful with that certification. Then we also have a question. The question on the presentation. Matt, are you okay to share the presentation with them?
Absolutely. I'll
Okay.
send it to Brianna when we're done.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then how do you calculate overhead if you're selling a product instead of a service?
Okay, so overhead is basically if you're selling a product, you need yourself and you need people who are helping you sell the product, correct? So, basically you're talking about, it depends how your companies run, all right? But let's just assume that it's you and another person helping you in the office to sell these products, all right? Those are two salaries right there, all right? I'm pretty sure you have either rent or there's a part of your home that's a home office. Whatever those costs are, you need to budget them for the year. So let's say, for example, you decide to make 60,000 a year and your assistant's making 45,000 a year. So right there, that's 105,000 plus whatever, cost you have getting these products out. That would be your overhead budget. Those 100 and something thousand for the year need to be included inside your product cost, whatever you're selling. Okay. So whatever cost you're getting that from the manufacturer, you need to tag on a part of those 100,000 for the year so you can start recovering that overhead with each product that you sell. Okay. And I know that's a very simplistic, explanation. But again, if we ever had the chance to go, to consult one-on-one, you can show me what your costs are, and I can kind of show you, this is what needs to go in certain places. All right. I won't give you ever a number because you know that more than I do, but I will help you, explain what costs you need to put into your overhead so you don't miss them, even your paper clips.
And then the last question, Matt, was from Shivani, who said, how do we obtain documents regarding the previous bids to better get an understanding of what we're doing wrong?
That is a very, very good question. It depends on the agency you're going to you're trying to find information on. However, I will say that every single agency has to share these documents. All right. Now the problem is, I'll give you an example. Right. If it were an FDOT job, I can go back right now online without any subscription or anything. Anybody can. I can go back and find jobs up to 2016 without asking for anything. All right. However, if you go to the state Florida vendor bid system, they keep everything for a month and then they file it. All right. So you can see the jobs that won for the previous month, but then they file it. And the only way to get to these after is to make a formal request to the board of trustees. All right. But I've done it before and they answer quickly. The only problem is you need to have contract numbers and stuff like that. All right. But again, it comes down to having information. If you have all the information to be able to you can request it from any government agency. Okay. And I don't know all of them, but I can figure it out. Most of the times I can figure it out how to get it.
And then I was just going to thank you guys for your participation. Thank you guys for questioning. Somebody asked about something about FOIA from the federal agency. Most of the time, you can reach out to the contracting officer. You can reach out, if it's federal, you can reach out to an OSDBU, which is an Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. You can also do a lot of information online because a lot of that information is public knowledge. We have some separate presentations and webinars that are focused on that. And I did, at the beginning, I want to apologize. I did forget to acknowledge MDEED. We actually were hosting this in partnership with MDEED, so I'd want to give them a shout out and just thank them for helping us to spread the word. And then I just want to thank everybody for participating. Like we said, the copy of the webinar will be available on our YouTube page, and then Matt very graciously offered to send it to Brianna so you can get a copy of the presentation too. So thanks again to Matt, thanks again to Barbara, and thanks again to you guys for participating.
And everybody, if if you aren't registered with the center yet, all right, I just want to take this little goodbye moment to remind you that, these services are at no cost to you. So please, reach out to us, register with us. And, if you want to talk to me or any other consultants about your business needs, we're here for you. Okay. Thank you everybody for your presentation. Thank you, Brian, for putting this on for us. Brianna, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks to Brianna. So everybody have a good day, and just thanks again. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.